Vi aspettavate che venisse James, in realtà questa sera vi racconterò io le sue avventure. No, niente, oggi è giovedì, quindi siamo già arrivati alla quarta serata della Storytelling Week. Mi fa piacere di vedere facce che ho visto le scorse serate, quindi non vi abbiamo annoiato troppo e anche facce nuove. Vi ringrazio di essere venuti anche questa sera e come avete potuto intuire dal video di circa 20 minuti, questa sera il nostro ospite è James Poole, direttamente da Londra. In realtà diciamo che è passato da Londra e sta venendo direttamente da Las Vegas, dove ha concluso il suo quinto ormai speed project, ha corso appunto la settimana scorsa in circa 6 giorni, 700 km da Los Angeles a Las Vegas. È andato a casa a Londra per salutare la sua amorosa ed è arrivato a Trento. Oggi a un certo punto ha dormito appunto a casa mia, ero molto preoccupato perché non si alzava più, ho detto è morto, non si sa, o è andato a correre Translagorai da solo, perché poteva essere anche benissimo così. E a un certo punto alle 12:30 sono andato giù e gli ho detto: James, scusami se ti disturbo, non volevo essere scortese, ma no, sono vivo. Ho detto bene, dai. Questa sera la serata verrà presentata dalla dottoressa Marta Crivellaro e niente, prima di lasciare a loro la parola volevo ringraziare Nick di Magnitudo e la Marti che ci stanno viziando un po' troppo questa settimana. Sì, veramente, ci stanno quasi adottando praticamente e volevo fare dire 2 parole a Nick, dai, di presentazione alla serata, visto che diciamo che questa è casa sua e noi continuiamo a invaderla visivamente, a occuparla. Grazie mille.
Ciao a tutti, speriamo che non prendano abitudine perché sennò mi stufo anche di vedere. Qualcuno è anche piacevole, ma non tutti. No, vi ringrazio di essere qua, è sempre un piacere ospitare queste serate perché in realtà se non le ospitassi sarei lì al posto vostro perché è proprio figo vederli, sono veramente bravi, organizzano delle cose super interessanti e anche di alto livello in realtà perché non è da tutti portare un personaggio così a Trento. Sono curioso anch'io di sentire cosa da raccontare perché incredibilmente è arrivato davanti a me a Translagorai nel 2023 e non mi spiego ancora come mai, anche se dal video qualcosa ho intuito. Niente, dai, lascio la parola a lui e a Marta e buona serata a tutti. Grazie.
Yes. So now it's up to you.
No pressure.
No pressure. So welcome, James, here in Trento. Thank you again to Nick and Martina for hosting us tonight. So for the ones that don't know, tonight we're gonna talk in English. That's the first things you have to keep in mind. And secondly, here with me there is James Poole, that is a British ultra runner and adventurer. He's famous for taking part for a lot of ultra running races all over the world, such as UTMB and Western States, but is also a lover of solo adventures, as you probably noticed in the video. So he's gonna talk about his experience, his passion as ultra runner, and much else, I would say. I will give the stage to James. So welcome, James.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for inviting me here and giving me a chance to share some stories with you. Apologies as in English, my Italian is your English will be much better than my Italian, and so I think for everybody involved, that's the best way. But yes, thank you for being here and thank you for hosting.
So, thank you, James. And let's start from the most recent adventure, I would say. So, I just came back from the Speed Project. That is your fifth, four in USA and one in Atacama, as we saw. How is the recovery going?
Yeah, it's going.
It's going.
Maybe I should just so everyone understands the context of the Sweet project. Maybe I'll just spend 2 minutes on explaining what it is, because before I found it, I had never heard of it, and it is very different to perhaps a Lavaredo it's for a Western States or a UTMB or any sort of trail race. But it originated 13 years ago in Los Angeles, and some friends got a van, and they drove. One person ran, and they did a relay from Los Angeles to the Welcome to Las Vegas sign, which is pretty awful. It's an awful, brightly lit sign, but it's kind of famous in Las Vegas. And they just ran as fast as could. The only rules were you have to run and you have to get there as fast as you can. So that was 13 years ago. And then 12 years ago, they had like a couple of relay teams. So it was a race. And then over the time, it's got bigger and bigger. And this year, I came back on Tuesday. This year, there's 100 relay teams of between 6 and 8, maybe 10 people. There's some complicated categories, but there was ended up being 600 or 700 people running from LA to Las Vegas. But what interested me more was the organizer, who was mentioned in the film, Niels, approached me in 2020 and said, we're thinking about doing it as a solo run. So the thing about the Sweet project is it has kind of 2 principles: no rules, which means you can go any route you like as long as you start in Santa Monica Pier and you finish in Las Vegas. And then this thing they call no spectators, which is, when you saw I had the tattoo, it really means be involved. If you go, don't just turn up and really turn up and give it everything you have, rather than, or don't just watch, be involved. So if you're on a team supporting somebody, really support them. It's more about just contributing to the success, rather than, I think, we can all be guilty of just being there, but not really involved. So he approached me, COVID came along and it didn't happen. And then eventually in 2022, I got the opportunity to run. There's another North Face film. If you can't sleep at night, then there's another North Face film on the YouTube channel. It's a bit shorter than that one, and it plots my journey from LA over Mount Baldy, which was a very silly idea, without spoiling it because it was covered in snow, and then through the desert to Las Vegas, and then and every year, a bit like RunTrento, you build a family, you build a community of people that maybe I don't see as much as I'd like, but every year I try and go and do the race if I can. And this year I did a new version, a different route, which was 700 kilometers, which I managed in 6 days, 23 hours. So about 100K a day on my own with a 30-liter backpack. So no support, just me. My girlfriend always calls it a backpack and a dream. And that's all I had really. And a little bit of water and some snacks and different clothing for the different weather, and a ton of battery packs and stuff. But yeah, I managed to get over. So I'm here, came off the plane yesterday in London. Day before, Tuesday, and flew here yesterday. And I'm recovering in the best way by eating pizza, and, telling stories and drinking beers. I mean, how can that go wrong?
Thank you, James. But may I ask you why this year you decided to choose a longer route?
That haven't worked out yet. I think I've done the 480 to 500 kilometer route, roughly the same route 3 times, and I think it was Albert Einstein was quoted as saying, doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result is the definition of madness. And so I didn't want to go back and do the same thing again on the same route. I was like, but I wanted to be there. So I spoke to the organizers, and they said, well, we have this thing. It's a secret project, and you can go from LA to Vegas, but you must go via these 4 places. And I was like, okay, let's do it. It was a really silly idea because those places were in the middle of nowhere, and when I got there, often it was dark. It was in the middle of the night, and I couldn't see anything, and I was on my own, and yeah, and so I go, oh yeah, that's good. I take this photo in the dark of me to prove I was there, and then I would just maybe sleep in the dirt somewhere, and then go to the next one. It wasn't all bad, but it was. Yeah, it was the things that were there were not. I mean, well, the first one I did see, which was McDonald's, the first ever McDonald's, and I'm like, I hate McDonald's. So, but it was part of the fun, or part of the process was to go and do this specific route, which was, yeah, it was different. I wouldn't do it again. But it was different.
So you did it because it was different.
I did it, yeah, because I wanted to be in the spirit of. There was It's worth noting that because I did the first international event, I've been involved with encouraging more people to run. And this year, for the first time, we had 41 runners, 41 people doing 500 kilometers. And importantly, 21 of them were women. So, we've been trying very hard to have more equality in the race as a whole, but in the relay race, but to have 21 women sign up against 20 men to run 500 kilometers through the desert is pretty cool. So part of me wanted to be there to meet some of them, and some of the people who would also run had brought people. So it's a little bit of a family, and I wanted to be involved and maybe also show some of those people that you can do more than you think you can. Even 500 kilometers is a long way, but that's not the limit of what we can do. I think it's the limit of, I don't want to do any more than 700 kilometers. I've worked that out. But I think it was important to go and keep moving things forwards, keep changing, keep doing things differently, keep turning up. If that makes sense.
Yeah. If it makes sense for you, it makes sense.
I mean, everybody might be like, why? But I still don't really understand why I might do it again. But it's because it's there, I guess.
Thank you. But maybe let's go a little bit back in time. How it happened? How are you finding yourself running in the desert in the last years? Was ultra running from the beginning, or there was a sort of trajectory in your approach to ultra running in the desert solo?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been running since I was small, tiny. So I've always been moving, running, being outside, cross country, and we were talking about cross country today, and young people doing it. And so that's where I started. And then over time, I've done a few different sports. So I was very big into bike racing, mountain bikes and road bikes, and then I did Ironman. And I was still running a little bit, but less for the side when I was cycling. And then I did a few Ironman, but my best discipline was the run. And then I thought, well, if I can do 9 hours for 3 sports, maybe I should just try 9 hours of running. And if anyone's ever run for 9 hours, you realise it's a lot harder than running, swimming, and cycling for 9 hours. But somehow I like the simplicity. You don't need to get a crazy expensive bike. Don't need wetsuits and water. You can just go out your door. And the simplicity of it is to put a pair of shoes on and go outside for 1 hour or 96 hours or something. It doesn't. But that's where it started. And I think when I first started doing these things, there was UTMB. It did exist, but you could get a UTMB entry a month before the race, and it's not the crazy lottery sign up it is now. There wasn't a UTMB World Series. There was races, and they were more low key and smaller, and very cool and very welcoming. And I think I just got caught up in that, and then like a lot of us, I think even if you come from, you're a beginner runner, you do a 5 kilometer race, and then you do a few, and then you're like, well, maybe I could do 10 kilometers, and I definitely found myself in that. I did a couple of do a 50 mile or a 100k, and then you do 100 miles, and which I think many could argue, but I think is like the milestone distance. It's if you do 100 miles, then it's a really long way. In most cases, you have to run at night for the whole night, and then you get opportunities, and you say yes to some silly things. So I ran across the Gobi Desert in 2018, which was in China. So and suddenly I was like, the adventure side of it was more important to me than the run. The running is part of it, but also it's often just movement, and the adventure sort of outweighs the fact that it's a run. So yeah, it's been a long journey, and I think one of the questions I often get is, how do you train for 500 kilometers? And the answer is, you start when you're 5 years old, because there's not many like magazines where you can tear out the 500 kilometer training plan, and it is just a series of moving over time and building up the strength, but also the mental strength to be on your own for long periods of time and problem solve the things that happen to you when you are on your own in the middle of nowhere. And I think that often is the harder part than the running, the movement.
Yeah, and going directly to the training, I was curious because you're from London, and there's not a lot of there are not a lot of places in London where you can train mentally to be alone in nature. So how do you train when you are in London? How is there any strategy you have to prepare yourself physically and mentally, because there is no free spaces and a lot of crowd?
Yeah. I mean, it's the physical part is easy. You go out, and I run the Atacama twice a day, every day, 200 kilometers a week, for quite a long period of time. I also practice with these things. It's more about movement than it is about running. And sometimes you will run, sometimes you will walk, but you're always moving forward to the end. And so I practice walking with I have a weighted vest, and I might go and do walk with real purpose. So maybe to try and get to 7 to 8 kilometers an hour with the weighted vest, which doesn't sound very fast. We were talking about this, and on the run today, it's about 24-hour 100-mile pace, which is, it's not going to win you any world records, but it is a solid pace to finish a 24-hour race. But learn to walk and with purpose. And so even when you're tired, you're still covering 7 kilometers an hour, 6.5 kilometers an hour, because the temptation when you're tired is to drop and you're doing 4 kilometers, and then it takes you a long time. So it's a case of, and London is an amazing city. If anyone ever wants to come, look me up on Instagram, and you want some running buddies, I can set you up for sure. But London's an amazing city for run culture. We have more crews and running clubs than you can possibly count, and we have a lot of green space and quiet places to run. So getting the miles in is easy, as long as they don't have any hills, because we haven't got any of those. But the mental thing just, I think, comes one with personality. And I love to go and hang out with people, but part of me also likes to be on my own. So I have that kind of split personality, I guess, a little bit, not often, but so I'm happy to spend 4 or 5 days on my own in this thing. But this year, 7 days, too long. So I was actually lonely, and I was ringing people going, someone speak to me, because I haven't seen anybody for 120 kilometers, and I'm bored and I can't talk to myself anymore. But I think it's a product of experience and spending a lot of time. If you do a 100-mile race, you can still spend a lot of that 100-mile race on you might not be miles and miles, but you might not see anybody for 4, 5, 6 hours. It's not uncommon to get broken up in the field and find yourself on your own for a long time. And I don't know, I kind of get my head around it, and but yeah, I think it's an experience and a comfort thing that you kind of need to be happy with. I think honestly, it comes with the more you do it, the more you remember that you've done it before, and then the better it is. But the first time is also, it's definitely a bit overwhelming. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're on your own and there's no one around for 100 kilometers. The worry you have, and then once you didn't die the first time, you probably don't die the second.
So, in this case, your first time was the Gobi.
My first big race was, I don't know, has anyone been out to Gran Canaria and done Trans Gran Canaria?
That's my feet, all my feet ones.
Yeah, it's beautiful out there. It's very. They have a race they call 360. It used to be part of the normal February race week, but they've now moved it. But they have a 360, which is about 270 kilometers, and that's unmarked, so you have to follow a route map on your watch or on paper. I did that in 2017, and that kind of was the first stepping. It was a bit more of a hybrid because it had checkpoints and places you could get food and things. So it was a kind of hybrid compared to a speed project where the only places that are out there are diners and gas stations and restaurants and things. So that's what got me into it, and it was an easier way of doing it than 500 kilometers.
Thank you. And I'm feeling an oxymoron, but I'm also living it. So we love to run. We love to run solo, but we are grounded into a community. And so maybe you can comment a little bit more this aspect, because I feel you're deeply living these both sides with running in the desert for days alone, but also actively living the running community. You are one of the founders of Advent Running in London. Why do you think we are so attracted and grounded in these two very apparently oxymorons?
Two sides of,
of the balance.
The same thing. I don't know. It's a good question, but I think it's. I'm not going to directly answer it. I'm going to paraphrase it something else. Because I started running so small, I think it's always been part of my life. I haven't thought of it as an extra thing that I have to do. It's just been something that I always do, and so it hasn't been like a sport. It's been part of my personal life. So, and I like to go and drink coffee and beers and eat pizza and things with my friends, whether I run or not. And I think once you find a way to marry that friendship with something else you do, it just becomes your thing. And you know, I honestly, I was totally thrilled to be asked to come, because I know that I came out for the Translocal Ride, and I loved the community that is here, and I love running community. And the fact, the one that I started, we don't do anymore because of COVID, kind of killed it. But from my community in London, people built their own communities, and when we got back to COVID, there was 50 versions of what I was doing happening, and that wasn't due solely to me. I think that was due to people, the way running has changed over time. But also it made me super happy that there's people we have in London, people who run and then they have pizza at the end. We have people who run and have coffee. We have people who run and go home. You know, and we have there's a running group in London for it doesn't matter what you do. You can find a running group that suits you, fast, slow, more about walking, all female, queer running club. There's so many, and I think that's what I found a lot. But it doesn't. But also running, we can do running in so many different ways, whether it be cross-country running or trail running or road running or track running or ultra running. Ultimately, it's an expression of the same sport, and I feel like it's very easy to get for us to judge one thing is better than another. But I just found myself loving all of those disciplines and all of those, and not all of those people, most of those people that you meet along the way. And I don't know, it's not an easy thing to answer, but you can do both, right? And there's not many sports, if you're honest, where you can go and do such a vast, football, 5-a-side, indoor and outdoor, and 11-a-side, and that's kind of football. You know, running, you can run 5K, you can run a marathon, you can run in circles, you can run in a straight line. You know, I feel like if you break it down, and it's a very simple sport, and it's attracted a lot of people. And yeah, why not embrace all of those elements rather than being a road runner or a trail runner? Go and just be a runner. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Even in English.
Thank you. Let's jump a little bit to another aspect that is important for you for what you do, that is photography.
Mm.
So you were mentioning yesterday to me that you still do a lot of photography as a activity. So what came first, running or the photography? Are they connected anyhow? And what do they represent for you in this moment?
So, yeah, thank you. So running came way before photography.
Mm-hmm.
But I once 10 or 15 years ago, running was less developed as it is now, and I was fortunate to work with a few running brands, Adidas, and currently have a contract with the North Face. And part of that was they wanted you to be involved in their activations, their photos and things. And so I ended up spending time with people who were photographers who loved running but weren't necessarily runners. And then the more I got into these adventures, the more I was thinking, I wish I had captured that journey somehow. And one of the photographers became my friend, and he gave me his old camera, and I would run almost every run with a camera on my right hand. In the end, it gave me tennis elbow in the end, and I had to stop because it was. Well, you know those. You know, if you've ever been on holiday and those crabs, where one has a giant arm. That was what I was going to become. Yeah, the big one. Yeah, the Amazon. Yeah, it's but I was running, and to be honest, it wasn't very good. But you have a digital camera, you can take a load. All you need is one good photo, and you're happy. And over time, there is definitely a demand for people who can run longish distances and take photos with the camera at the same time, because it does allow us to get to some places that usually a photographer might not. If you don't run, or you're not willing to hike for 3 hours or 4 hours, you can't always get to the crazy mountain top. So that suddenly found there was a niche where being able to run with an athlete for a few hours to find the right spot was beneficial, and it's kind of grown from there. And now I always take photos for pleasure, but I also earn my living from good photos and video, and yeah, it's another thing that develops alongside the running, and the photography develops as well, and yeah, it makes me happy ultimately.
That's good.
Yeah, that's what it's about, huh?
Thank you. So I was imagining myself running with a camera. Like,
yeah, it's not good. And over time, my cameras have got bigger and heavier, so it's.
So let's go back to the community, because yes, you told that with the COVID, the community in London was a little bit stopped, but you are still very active in terms of international community regarding sensibilization on certain topics like the environment, equity and diversity in running. But maybe you can tell us what you do in these topics, because I saw your link tree, so I go into the project you are mentioning regarding collecting trash from the trails, but also promoting female running and equity and diversity representation in running. What do you do practically in this sense now?
Wow. How long have we got? I think there's so many initiatives now that are out there to change what running looks like, to have more black and brown people involved, to have more women involved, to talk about running in a way that's perhaps more encouraging. I mean, I think if you traditionally look at, and I'm doing this in English, so I'm sure it applies, but forgive me if it doesn't. Is that I think in English running is about going fast and hurting and smash it up, leave it on the. Nike is a great example, of t-shirts with slogans, "Running sucks" and things like that. It's like maybe that that works, I think, largely for a male audience, but maybe it doesn't work for all audiences. So over the years worked on lots of different projects on looking at how do we encourage more people to go out and do something that I love, that we love, and how to make that more accepting. And it's difficult, and I don't think as a middle-aged white guy, I'm probably not the best person to be a spokesperson for that. But we all have to go out and try and contribute and ask the questions that are awkward sometimes, so you understand how people want to be, how the LGBTQ people want to be referred. And this doesn't apply to running; this applies to general life. But how do we? Why do you see less black and brown people on the trails and on the roads? And if you don't understand what the barriers are, you can't understand what the problems are. More simply, the trash I work with some organisations in the UK. One is called Trash Free Trails, and the easy answer to trash on the trails is for us to go out and pick it up. But there's more rubbish being put on the roads and the trails than we're ever going to be able to pick up. So it's hopeless. And if you think about it, that the solution is we go out with gloves and pick it up. We're never going to do that. The trick is to change the behaviour of people so that they don't do it. And there's a phrase you may have called like "leave no trace," which means obviously don't leave your rubbish out. What we're working on is something called "leave a positive trace." So instead of, by all means pick the rubbish up, but when you're out on the hills, in the mountains, have a conversation with somebody about how amazing what you're doing is. It could be a person who's sitting on a bench, it could be someone walking, it could be your friend, but do more than leave no trace. Leave no trace is fine, but that's not enough. And so we work on trying to encourage it. Actually, the trash thing is actually quite a lot worse with mountain bikes than it is with runners occasionally use gels in races and they get, but there's a culture in mountain biking with Red Bull and energy drinks and things, and you'd be amazed if you go to a trail centre how much stuff is. But just trying to change the culture that people are thinking, not just it's a nice place, it's such a positive place, why would I leave anything here? And so we're working on slightly bigger things than just there must be some in Italy, like litter picking things, but it's okay. But it doesn't change things, it doesn't move things and the needle enough to make change quickly enough to make a difference. So I think, without going on and on forever, it's more just about, I absolutely love running. I hope that comes across in my film, in my conversation today. And I just want more people, whoever they are, to go out and experience some of the things I've had. Not necessarily 500 kilometers in the desert, because it's a thing. But to start running or to have an adventure, because an adventure is simply going left out of your door when you always go right. It's going to that mountain, that hill that you've seen and never been up. That it doesn't need to be 500 kilometers in the desert or Mont Blanc or Everest. It could just be going somewhere that you've never been, and maybe when you get there it'll be the most amazing thing you've ever done, but you have to take the step to have the adventure, and that builds into that. And whether that adventure is going over a hill or going out and running for the first time, I love more people to experience some of the things I have, because I've been super privileged. So if I can find a way to share some of that with people, then it would make me very happy.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing, because I think that with documentaries and what you say tonight, you're motivating us a lot to change our usual path and go in discomfort.
Yeah, maybe we need to be a little uncomfortable sometimes to make things happen.
So now I have a spicy question. So as you mentioned, when you started ultra running, the community and the dimension of the sport was completely different. And recently, ultra running attracted the attention of, let's say, the consumer culture, with all that this brings within. and you are a sponsored adventurer. And so, how you keep it simple?
Firstly, I'm very fortunate that the North Face have been actually not very demanding in what they ask, and they have encouraged myself and Melody to tell stories and I often sit on stages that they think and say to people, it's not about the kit. And I know I'm in a store, so sorry. But I think
this was the spice, also the spice.
yeah, the spicy bit. But what I mean by that is, don't wait to have the kit to do the adventure. Do the adventure and find out you need the kit. Because I think there's certainly people I know who are worried about going up, hiking up a hill because they haven't got the right shoes, or they don't think they've got the right shoes, and maybe they don't, but they're so stuck in they're paralyzed by the company. Should they get a 12-liter backpack or a 20-liter backpack? And you only need to go online to find the numbers of questions about what should I buy. So there's a million good brands out there doing great stuff with kit. I think it's very hard now not to buy really good kit that lasts and at a different range of price points and technical and technologies, but it's all pretty good. You don't actually absolutely need it to go and have that first turn right out of your door. But I think people feel that way. A lot of people, not everyone. Maybe I'm not in a room of people, and I'm conscious that I'm in a room of people who have turned up to hear someone talk about running. So it's not, probably not those people, but I'm sure we've all seen that. And the North Face have always been very encouraging for me to say things like that, because if you get people into the sport and they love it, they'll be in it for a long time. And any brand, doesn't need to be North Face, will benefit from having longevity of people buying their brand. I think if you spend €1,000 on and you find it's not for you, it's not. That's not really how the sports grow. So it's always a challenge to try to balance, not to be authentic and be me and have brand saying you need to do this, but they've been very good, and I think I wouldn't work with somebody who wasn't like that. I think the money is nice, but the money isn't what drives me, and I think sometimes the influencer market can be, you find that people start authentically doing something they love, and then they end up only doing things that someone pays them for. That isn't me. I spend too much of my own money doing. So my LA to Las Vegas was not contributed by any brand other than it came out of my own pocket. So I still think that that's how I want to be authentic, and if I can find a way to tell a story about it that encourages more people to be active, then that's great. But it certainly, it's not the main reason I do it, is to get free shoes, because there's easier ways of getting free shoes than spending 7 days in a desert.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Thank you. Now a practical curiosity. I have seen another time the documentary. How did you choose the path?
Yeah.
How do you? I think it's an adventure, but you have to to plan it a little bit, because you are in the desert. You're not in the middle of the city. You can't ask a Coca-Cola, a Coke to anyone that's passing by. So how do you plan it?
Well, we're in a good place these days that there's so many digital apps and maps, and there's so much resource. Google Maps. So it was a combination of initially at Google, 2 points, because the speed project has no rules. So where do I need to start? And then obviously with this year's route, I had to go to certain places, and it was very simply putting that in and then having a look at what the very basic route was, and then looking at. I didn't want to run on busy roads, so I then looked for quieter paths, and if I could find trail, and then looking at how far between those points was it safe-ish to none of it gets to a point where you have to either decide whether in this time was either doable, it was either safe enough or it wasn't doable, because I think the maximum distance I had was 130 kilometers between 2 points of safety, a grocery store and a restaurant. And so you have to make a decision whether you think you can carry enough food and water and things that can get you out of the problem if that one occurs with 130 kilometers. So it takes a bit of a leap of faith. It takes some trust and some risk. You just have to sometimes say, I don't know. So this time, the route went over the San Bernardino Mountains, which are not super high, but they're 2,500 meters. And so it's March, and even in that part of the world, though you might see in California, it always seems to be sunny, you still get quite a lot of snow. And so I was a bit worried before I started that I would have a chunk of snow up there. And clearly I'm trying to get as fast as, so my bag is 30 liters and weighs about 10 kilos, but I didn't really want to carry a ton of cold weather gear, crampons and things. So it was a little bit of a risk of, even the couple of days before, did I need running spikes to get over that section? And the second issue was bears. And so, not things you have to worry about too much in London, but over that bit there, and you go very close to Big Bear Lake, and it's called Big Bear Lake because there's a lot of bears there. So it was those two things that you kind of plan for in the mapping, and kind of find a route that's probably not too remote and has some plan Bs. But to answer the question very more succinctly, Strava, Komoot, Google Maps, images, Google webcams on things to try and work out whether there's snow, and quite a lot of planning goes into the route, and then a lot of hope, because you can plan everything as much as you like on Strava and things, and you find out that someone's put a fence in there, or that route that was on Strava hasn't existed for 20 years, and there's a lot of that, and then there's the kind of, okay, so that direction, and yeah, so it wasn't too bad this time, but the Atacama race was a real problem, because we went through the mines of the Atacama Desert, and the issue wasn't my travel, it was the vehicle's travel. And you would find in the Atacama Desert it rains about once every 20 years. So when it rains, that rain cuts like crevasse into the desert, and they can be 4 or 5 meters deep and 2 or 3 meters wide. And you can like climb down them and climb up the other side. It's not that difficult, but the pickup truck couldn't. So the pickup truck would then have to drive back and try and find a way around what effectively were rivers, dried out riverbeds, and they'd have to find a surface to come round and pick me up or find me on the other side. And it turned out in many occasions that wasn't possible. And in the film, there was 8 hours with no water and no shade, and no battery on my phone, and a few moments of like, how the hell are they going to find me? Yeah, they were 100 kilometers away from where I was, and I had no way of getting in contact with them. Well, the last thing I said to them is, I will be on the route. You have that route. That's all we can do. I said, I won't deviate from the route. So as long as I'm on the route, at least one person is. And Nikki went across and they drove around and eventually found me. But there's quite a quirky story, because I was actually really upset with them that they left me in the desert. There's a whole section of the film that never got used, because it was just me swearing and then going, I can't believe you left me in the desert for 8 hours. But I had to sleep that bit, and then I got up and left, and they were going, you can't leave now, and I'm like, it's a race, I've got to go, I've wasted time because of you guys, and like I left in a bit of a huff, a bit of a girly huff, and as I was walking down the road, I found all this stuff on this like dirt road, and I had those like compression boots, the big ones. There's my compression boots in the middle of the road, and then I found like a stove, and then I found 20 toilet rolls and food, and I messaged them. I was like, guys, are you ahead of me or are you behind me? And they're like, oh no, we're still camping. And it turned out that they'd driven so fast to find me that was just things that just been flying off of the vehicle. And so my $1,000 boots were like in the middle of the desert. And I'm like, I just took a photo and I was like, can you pick these up on the way when you come back? Look, they're like 6 kilos. I am not carrying them to the desert for the foreseeable future. But yeah, it was. I wasn't angry with them for very long, but finding this trail of food, yeah.
There were no hallucinations.
There was no hallucinations. I think I promised in my video to tell a couple of stories.
Yeah.
One is that I once, in that race in Trans-Gran Canaria, I actually killed a chicken in the race, and it doesn't sound as sinister as it was meant. So I didn't eat it. I wasn't that hungry. It was I'd been on my own again in that race. It wasn't many people. That's okay. I came around the corner and there was a dog, and it was like it caught the chicken, and it was like tearing into pieces. And obviously, as I came around the corner, the dog ran away, and then this chicken was like sort of half dying, and I was like, and it made me really upset because I was like a bit emotional and tired, and I thought I can't just leave it screaming, so I broke its neck, and it obviously stopped and stopped screaming, thank God, and then I cried solidly for about 20 minutes as I walked down the trail that I murdered the chicken, but I probably should, in reflection, should have just left it, but I don't know. But at the time, it seemed like the right thing to do. And then later on, this guy passed me and he goes, "Did you see that dead chicken on the trail?" And I was like, "No." And then my other hallucination, my real hallucination story is that I went to the Gobi Desert in 2018 and ran this race, 430 kilometers, 93 hours or something of running, and it was very high, so you could go over like 4,000 meters there, and you know, it was quite competitive, and I wanted to do as well as I could, and I ran, I think, 40 hours straight without sleeping, and yeah, don't do that. So that's one. And I got to this point, and it was and the Gobi Desert is famous because it has the Tibetan plateau, and the wind comes off the 7,000 and 8,000 meter mountain, so it's super cold. So at night, it's like the wind cuts you in half. And I was wearing like down trousers and down jacket and like all the clothes I had on. And I just got really disoriented about where I was. And somehow I found myself on this frozen lake. And around the edge of this frozen lake were these pontoons with boats on them. And I was like, knew the checkpoint is like 1 kilometer away. I was like, I've got to go across this frozen lake. And I was like tiptoeing around the ice and climbing over the boats, and it took me like an hour and a half to get to this checkpoint. And when I got there, I was hypothermic, and the medical people were like, you need to warm up before you go anywhere. They put me in a sleeping bag, and they put just plastic bottles of hot water all around me, and I had these weird dreams while I was laying there, and my legs were screaming, and I got up the next day and look out they put these big military tents there, so it's very well organized, and I opened this like military tent door, got outside, looked around, no lake. Never been a lake. I was at 4,000 meters. I don't know what, but I'd love to wish someone had videoed me, because as far as I was concerned, I was on this frozen lake, and I was terrified that I was going to fall in the frozen lake, and I was going to break the ice and die. But that's all, I was literally tiptoeing around things. But never been a lake, never likely to be a lake. Like one of the driest places on the planet. And so yeah, the lesson was don't run 40 hours, and because you get to a point where you don't know what's real and what's not. But yeah, frightening in some ways, but also kind of amusing to think that I've been climbing over boats that didn't exist.
Thank you, James. I think we can leave the microphone to the public if there is anyone that has questions, curiosities, or whatever. Don't be shy.
No bad questions.
This question.
I know there are questions.
Let's tell us something about Translogarai.
Translogarai?
Yep.
Oh my God, that race. Hands up if you've done Translogarai.
Hands up,
Oh,
guys.
yeah. Not many. I'm not sure people are like, they're not sure what they want to admit they've done it or not. So, yeah, I don't think I'm still trying to rehydrate from my Translagora experience in 2023. Yep. Yeah, I mean, at that rate, they're so wild, that thing. And it took me 23 hours to do 50 miles.
There are lakes. There are lakes, and they are real.
There was lakes. Maybe I was to see them. I don't know. But it was snow. I know that because I ate more snow in a race than I've ever eaten in my life. I was so dehydrated, and I was like just scraping like this thin layer of like black dirt off the top, and just picking up these snowballs and just putting them in my mouth. And going, oh, I was so dehydrated, and yeah. But I did get my sticker.
Yep.
I did get my very small hologram. It is a hologram. No, it's an amazing. Translagora is amazing experience. Has anyone done the double?
Lucino.
Yeah.
Last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
45
hours.
18. Yeah.
He's still alive. He's still
I was
alive.
thinking about it. And the clonk of that stone on that thing. Every footstep, clonk, clonk. And everything moves. So these big rocks.
But he
just
gave
move.
2 stickers.
2 stickers.
2 stickers.
Of course he did. He's a legend. 2 stickers. You're so good to them. Yeah, so good to the finishers.
Are you gonna try it out and back?
I'd like to, but you know, I need to really think about that. It's a long way. It's just that I think it's the lack of any support along the way. It's hard, isn't it? On that way. There's a couple of refugios, right? But
yeah,
it's
basically 2 points.
Yeah, that's quite a lot for 100 miles.
No, 5 if you
5 on the way
yeah.
back. Yeah. Come on, guys, must be a question out there somewhere. Maybe we've covered
Also
so
in
much.
Italian.
Okay.
Yeah, you can say in Italian, and if that's the problem, we can translate.
What do you do in your free time? Because in our free time we run.
What do you mean free time? I talk about running in Italy. No, but it's a good point. But like, I used to work in finance, and then I now work in running. And I always worried when I worked in finance that to work in something that you love, you may then think of that thing you love as work, and then you hate it. And it hasn't happened. So, I mean, most of the things I do are in some way connected to being outdoors. So the photography and videography, and then, yeah, running is kind of every day. Find a way to drink beers. Probably that's the answer. Drink beer in my free time.
I have a question that is not much related to running, but you said before that you're trying to do more to be inclusive for the sport.
Yeah.
And you say, right, like as a middle-aged white man and a white guy,
Yeah.
it's a bit strange. Which question do you ask to people? Which is the way that you do it, even if it's a bit weird?
No, I think you have to be weird because there isn't any easy way to.
Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, a good example is the number of black and brown people who are on the tread. And so, my question though was, how do I refer to black and how do I refer to you guys? Because you want to be correct, right?
Yeah.
And what you have to be is incorrect for the, and with someone who's also wants to move things forward, and then they correct you. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. There's something wrong with being ignorant. So if you say, how do I refer to people of color? They go, oh no, I don't like to be called people of color. We like to be called black and brown people. But the complicated thing is that isn't uniform across the world. So, but I think without having the difficult conversations, you never learn anything, and then it's very tricky. But the only way you get through tricky things is to have good conversations with good people who also want to move things forward, and then they correct you, and then you don't get it wrong, and then the conversation moves. And I know from my friends black runners in London who are trail running, their phrase is, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so their thing is get more representative. If you have more people, black and brown people on the trails, then more black and brown people will see them on the trails and they will go and do it. If you're a white person, this is not a thing you ever have to. You don't go along to a trail race and go, oh, I was worried about coming because there won't be enough white people here. But because there will be more people like me. But if you don't have those conversations, you don't necessarily understand that. So having those difficult conversations it blows my mind. And I don't want to be wrong, but I'm often wrong. And there's a whole lexicon around LGBTQ as well about that, and it's difficult. But the way you move things forward is through honest conversation and encouragement and being an advocate for that the best way you can. Because a white middle-aged guy isn't going to encourage black, brown people to go out trail running, probably. It's not easy. It's not an easy solution, but I think you have to go and try and change it. There was a question over here.
Yeah. I would like to connect to this last point, and also I'm taking the idea from our chats during the last weekend, and it's really connected to this last item. But I would like to understand about women in trail running and running at all. If you have already found a way, and if you have suggestion about how to move from slogans that, from my opinion, they take apart about communication in media and moving something for people. But if you do something, if you find an association, a way to do something concrete, and if you can find, if you can see a difference between, okay, 5 years ago I think that was another situation, and now after some action.
And there's some really good people, women, mostly out there moving the sport forwards, in my opinion, for women. It's not perfect, and often you have to choose. You can't solve all the world's problems. And I have a really good friend, Sophie Power. She is a really terrific runner. She was, I don't know if you ever saw this UTMB photo, her breastfeeding at Courmayeur. She became quite famous. It was a picture by Alexi Berg, who's an awesome photographer. He took this photo, and then she didn't have like an Instagram account. She was into running, but she didn't do anything. She's got 3 kids, but she has a thing called She Races, and her thing is about trying to change the lexicon, but also making sure that there's tampons at aid stations. Races have typically been devised by white middle-aged men for white middle-aged men, and things haven't changed. And equality in prize money. How's that taken so long to happen? Equality in the numbers of starters in races, and trying to bring that. And I think there's just more men running than there are women, so it becomes hard to make it 50-50. But seeing an increase in that on a year-by-year basis, trying to get to 50, as the sport continues to grow. But it's doing all, engaging with women, and then going to races and saying, she has a guide that she gives to races and says, this is created with fellow female racers about how we want the race to be run for us, and that you should sign up to pledge to be like this, and maybe not on year 1 or year 2, but to see continual growth and to see changes for maternity.
Something about pregnancy.
It's been a massive problem. It's been a massive problem with UTMB until last year. It's been a problem. Deferrals for races that cost €350 when you have to sign up a year before is a problem. And so I can't take any credit for that, other than to fully support in my own way that this is happening. And I want to see 50 people. I want to see 21 women on a 500-kilometer race against 20 men. I want to see equality, but I take no credit because I can't. Because I would never have a situation where I worry about needing a tampon in an aid station. So I can't push for that. I think you can't push for something that you can't relate to directly. In the same way, as she's a white middle-aged woman with 3 kids, she cannot change easily the number of black and brown people in running because she's not a black and brown person. And she can have the conversations, but I think it requires all these groups to kind of work together, but also working on their element of equality. One organization to change the world doesn't work, but many organizations united by the joy of running, the joy of being outdoors does, I think. Does that make sense?
Oh, thanks.
God, it's got deep in this conversation. Usually come when someone says, how many gels do
So
you have?
how many beers?
How many beers and
How many
gels
beers will you drink after?
what was your speed between 70 and 75 kilometers? But we got deep. I like it. Important stuff.
So how many beers on Saturday after Run Grande?
Yeah, too many. It was actually on Sunday that the Speed Project has a pool party. And, yeah. I mean, it's one of, if you ever go onto Instagram, and it's about 10% of the. Well, everything you see on Instagram is there and it looks amazing, but that's about 10% of the experience. Because the other 90% is like it's laying in the dirt and wishing you hadn't done it. But the 10% they show is pool parties, standing on RVs with
and we were wondering
spraying each other with champagne like those on there.
We were wondering how he will be in Trento in 2 days.
So it was the day that was the pool party was also my birthday.
Yeah.
And I managed to make it out till about 4 p.m. And then I was so wrecked, went to bed, and I woke up at like 10 p.m. and I'm not going back out. And, so yeah, not as long as I would have liked. So yeah, it was a big week.
It's just.
Yeah, it's true. Any more? We've spoken for a long time.
Maybe one last question regarding to running, or like your preparation. I mean, obviously, running, since you've been able to, prepares your body physically to manage these kind of races. But did you do something else to prepare your body for that kind of races, like strength training or something else, or you just run more to run more?
Yeah, I'm a bit guilty of never doing any strength. I mean, no one really likes to. If you're a runner, you don't really like doing strength training, do you? Much good. If I had an hour to run or an hour to do strength training, I'm running. So, but I do the work on. We're having this conversation on Run today. I do a little bit of stuff with barefoot shoes, but as a tool. 5 kilometers, 6 kilometers, 7 kilometers slowly as a way of keeping good lower leg strength, but you have to be careful with them because they can be quite savage to calves and lower leg. I do the weighted vest stuff, which is strength, and some of the things that we do, I would consider. So we ran across Mallorca in early March, which is 145 kilometers, 3 days, but with a very heavy backpack, and that I would consider to be one, adventure, but two, very purposely carrying has 8,000 meters of vertical climb and descent. So 8,000 meters of climbing and descending is good for the quad strengthening or the damage that you then recover from to do something like this. So it's not that I'm not in the gym 3 times a week doing that, but there are some more purposeful parts of my running. And the other part is I spend quite a lot of time not going very fast. Because if you want to run, for most people, if you want to run more, you have to run a bit slower on some of those runs and have 20% of your or less of your week as intense efforts, and the rest of it quite easy. So no strength training, but lots of purposeful thought around, and then multiply that up by 20 years of ultra running, and you kind of build a lot of inherent strength. But it's a tricky one. We were talking about today about the need and the desire to do it, and I think it does make a lot of sense if you know you're prone to certain injuries, or you have a weaker left side or right side or something, then it makes a lot of sense. I think. And the recovery part.
We are running.
Go slow and stuff. I mean, the recovery part. I think I'm quite well tuned to listening to my body, and if I want to move, I'll move. And even in every week, if I don't run, I don't feel guilty. I don't need. I love running. I don't need to run to feel like I've fulfilled my day, week, year. I think I have a healthy, unhealthy maybe, but at the same time, relatively healthy with its. I know people who like they don't run, they don't feel like they can exist. That's not me. I think it's learning to have balance and understand what your body can do, allows you to make good choices about recovery and it's none of those things are easy, and they're very specific to the individual. And what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you.
What about heat training or conditioning your body to the temperatures?
Yeah, I mean, the food stuff. I mean, you just know going into 500 or 700 kilometers that you're just gonna be hungry. I don't think there's any getting around the fact that if you don't see food for 120 kilometers and you can't carry an indefinite amount of food, that you're going to spend some time wishing you had food. And one of the things that I know from experience is I'm pretty well fat adapted. So at a low intensity, I can burn fat as my primary source of fuel. And we all have, even the leanest elite athlete has 30,000 calories of fat on them, and if you can unlock that, it doesn't stop you feeling hungry, starving, but it does mean you can use that fat as your primary source and keep moving forward, about slowly, but and then the heat thing, I've never successfully done it. There's a couple of good processes. I mean, the challenge with heat adaptation is, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, is that if you're in a big training week and then you add heat to it, you're in a very big training week, because the response to adding heat is it's a stress response. So when you're training and adapting to heat, you have to have a period of easier running, because when you add the heat on top, you go back to your peak. So you run less, you add heat, but then you become, if you like, you are detraining. So you have to do it in two steps. One is to maybe 5 weeks before your important thing, is you take 1 to 2 weeks where you reduce your volume or your intensity or both, and do the heat training, and then you go back to training, and then in the weeks and your taper, you add the heat back in. But it's a faff, and I think it probably works really well. I end up like everybody, whilst I work in running, I work, so I'm trying to balance that approach, that very disciplined approach to having to get on a plane and to go to a photo shoot, and I'm never going to see a sauna or something, or a solar sauna, something like that. But no doubt there's definitely benefits. So I just end up going and sucking it up, and it hurts. But yeah, I mean, from a performance point of view, if the speed project is not the world championships, it's a very weird, fun experience that I'd encourage you all to look at and do it as a relay team or do it as a solo. But it's not UTMB. No one cares. And so to go through all that process to do something that no one really cares seems like it's a lot of effort. To me, anyway.
Thanks.
I have one question, if I can. Where would you like to run next, or where to have the next adventure?
It's a good question. I'd really like to get back out to China somehow. I mean, it's like a crazy huge place. So, but I haven't been looking at the Namibian desert, which looks cool, and doable. Yeah, but it was also it was a German colony. Thank you. So it has Windhoek is a kind of quite a civilized big city, and you could definitely go end there or go through it. So that means it's like infrastructure, and so you have to look at some of these things. And because Africa itself is quite a dangerous place. I have a guy in London. His name's Dio, and he spent he tried to run from South Africa to London over 386 days. That was he was trying to tell the story. He's a black guy. He was trying to tell the story of the natural migration of the human being, and he ended up 3.5 weeks in prison in southern Sudan for taking photos. He ended up being arrested, and then he had to fly to Egypt. They basically is banned from that country. There's another guy, another British. I don't know why it's all the British guys. There's another guy called the hardest skis. I don't know if you saw this guy's name, Ross. Can't remember. He raised £1 million for charity. He got robbed. He got taken hostage and robbed a couple of times in Africa. So as I said, there's always risk in these things, but it's like this risk you can manage and risk you can't. And I think so. If I was going to go and do something out there, I think it'd be something with a bit more risk averse than trying to find some war-torn country and run across it. But oh, look at that! Thank you. Yeah, it's just. I mean, the world's a huge place and an amazing place we live on, and so there's tons of places I'd love to go. Just need to always, like everyone else, juggle work and other commitments and finances and trying to make them happen.
Do you maybe choose like a place also based on photography? Maybe there's a place you want to go to, just have fun and.
The thing about I do have a thing about desert. If you ever go to one, the light in the desert. You saw those pictures it's like that every day. And the photography is always about light. Without light, you have nothing. So if you go to California, one of the reasons I love going to California is you can go down to Santa Monica and be on the beach, and the sun comes up, and you're like, oh my God. You can see why Hollywood is there and why they make films there, because the light is amazing most days, day and night. And so I feel like the deserts definitely deliver a lot of that, like beautiful, endless skies and endless mountains, and they're all also different. I think a lot of people think of deserts as the Sahara with that like endless sands, and my experience is that most of them are not like that. They're like rocky and mountainous, but different. But I feel like from a artistic point of view, there's always something special about whether it be big sand dunes or rocky something or other. Getting the right light in there is it's pretty special.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask you if you can talk a little bit more about what we were discussing yesterday on how you need to clear things up with family and friends before heading into the desert or something?
Yeah. So we were talking last night about that kind of loneliness, being on your own, being in your head too much. And one of the things that I tried to do before if you're going to be on your own for a long time, you think about a lot of stuff. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. Some of it's things that you should have done, wish you'd done differently. You get a lot of time to think about stuff, and one of the things I try and do is some housekeeping around things before I go, things I should sort out. And I don't need to be specific about it, but sometimes we're all guilty of making mistakes with things, with people. Often it's with people, like I wish I told that person this, or I wish they'd not done this, and it kind of it's there in the back of your mind and or in the front of your mind, and so it's good sometimes to just pick up the phone, often pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm sorry I missed your birthday, didn't do this, let you down on this thing. I'm an idiot, please forgive me. Or you ring someone and say, you really annoyed me about this, but I don't want it to carry on. And get those things out. Because if you are on your own for 7 days feels like a month. When those things weigh on you. And it's actually quite good, it's quite a good general thing to do anyway, I think. Don't let the stuff fester. So go and sort that crap out with people, and then it's not on your shoulders when I'm self-employed, so I try and get all my invoices paid, and there's that one invoice that someone's not paid, and that will bug me for a week, that they haven't paid it, and why haven't they paid it, or make some good intentions before you go, because that stuff is hard to do when you're out there. It's a bit of a weird one, but it's my kind of tip to keeping my head clear and not letting things get on top of you when the situation you're in is hard. It's really easy to find things that to stop you moving forward, or to to want you to quit. To take all those, get rid of as many of manage the manageables, get rid of the things that are going to upset you when you're out there on your own and you wonder why on earth you're doing it, because it happens a lot. Yeah, sort that shit out. So it's a bit of sort of mental hygiene, I guess, if that's the phrase for it. I don't know, maybe it helps some people, but if you're going to go out in the desert, or if you're going to do something hard, maybe remove those obstacles that will stop you doing the hard things before you go out there. That's a thought for life, isn't it? Good question.
Does North Face support you in any adventure, or is it like you proposing something to them, or is it like you have to accept everything that they propose to you?
It's definitely. If I waited for them to ask me to do something, I'd never go anywhere. I mean, I love them to bits, and they're like the kit. I think is genuinely brilliant, and they're super good people. But I'm a minuscule cog in a giant North Face machine, and I sometimes feel they have. I'm going to use this word again. ADHD. I don't know if you know, they have ADHD on product category. Because they're running for. They just launched some brilliant. I'm going to do a little promotion. Pro 3 trail shoes with a carbon plate and things in. They launched them this week. Next week they'll be on climbing or hiking or whatever and they have a very short attention span for any one particular, which I think is detriment to some for running. Very selfishly, I think the product's amazing, but they don't tell enough. They don't spend enough time telling people about it, for other people to work it out. But no, I mean, I think it's true of every athlete who is on their books proposes. They approach me about campaigns for products, and I've gone on some great trips where they've said, "Would you be the part of the team or the face of this for us?" But it's that's a photographer going one more time. And if you can run that 10 meters one more time, and one more time, and this is the last time, no, one more time. It's a clothes horse. You're a clothes horse, and it's fun, and you get to go places. But it isn't. It's not running. It's standing around mostly in a car park, getting cold. But so it's a good. But I think anyone who wants to get a brand to work with them, then you have to do. Philo and I were talking today. You have to do all of the legwork. I have to put together, but I think to that extent, you have to create a really compelling story about what you're going to do, and it can't just be because I want to go on holiday to this place. It looks cool. You have to think about what's the story behind it. How does that work with the brand? What's the brand going to get out of it, other than you go on the show? And it is a process, but I think if you sell in the story, and it's good. For me, it was running across the desert, and I was lucky because they were launching a product that was designed for high temperatures in the desert. It's just a bit fortunate at the same time, and they loved the story. And then they came back and said, "We want to do this, this, and this." But you can, unless you have a really good idea, they'll never pay for the challenge. I think the mistake people make often is they say, "I want to go on holiday." And they want someone to pay for it. Don't we all? But I mean, I think that's the trick is to have a really good story. For me, it's a little bit. I've now done a couple. I have two problems. One is, do they want to see my face again on a thing? And honestly, it's like it's a genuine. How many times can you be the face of them for a couple of weeks? And then also, you can't. Once you've done the one thing, you need to reinvent yourself as another in a new way, which is hard. It's not hard. It's not easy getting funding if you go and do an adventure. But I can tell you, almost every athlete on the planet, whether they're climbing Everest or solo navigating something or other, has had to work hard to get that funding from whatever brand it is. Often multiple brands, because no one's coming out and saying, "Would you like to go and cycle across the world?" It's a good question, though. Is that a wrap? thank you guys. Thank you all the questions. Thank you for coming and listening to me with run. But you're legends. Thank you.
Thank you.
James for sharing. I think it was very important because running is much more than how many just and which pace you keep in your adventure.
It should be.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah.
Tonight it was like this. It is like this, and that's what we like and we love, and that's why we run in a community. Now I will invite you to relax a bit because you speak a lot. You spoke a lot. Maybe you're thirsty, and but there will be time to chat with him and all together and to keep the conversation up. And in the meanwhile, a couple of maybe you can shift to Italian. Can I? Can I?
I'm the only English person. It's good with me. Please.
Couple of un paio di informazioni di servizio. Anche stasera c'è a disposizione il match di RunTrento. Quindi vi ricordiamo che da ieri sera è disponibile Burro, il primo numero della rivista di RunTrento, e in più ci sono le t-shirt e qualche felpa, vedo al basso confermo, e nonché delle birrette, strano, inusuale per noi, e qualche patatina gentilmente offerti da Nick e Martina. Cosa ho dimenticato? Campezzo. Dov'ero? Vi ricordiamo che potete iscrivervi alla preparazione alla LUT organizzata da Diretta University. Potete chiedere a Roby maggiori informazioni domani e sabato. E vi ricordiamo che ci vediamo domani sera a Santa Colomba dalle 7:30.
Alle 7:30 inizia.
Alle 7:30 inizia, quindi un po' prima, ok? That's it.